All right, and welcome everyone this morning, as we're saying. And I'm going to turn it over to our Toastmaster mission is we provide a supportive and positive learning experience in which members are empowered to develop communication and leadership skills, resulting in greater self-confidence and personal growth. That's the Toastmaster mission, and we are on a mission this morning. Thank you for being here. And we're excited this morning. Today is our mastermind meeting where we get to see what's going on up there for you in your mind this morning. What tickles your box? What focus on your mindset and how do you grow today? We're so excited to have an amazing mastermind leader today, but our Toastmaster for today is the incredible, the incomparable, the woman that's done everything for Toastmasters all around District 12. And even from the region, we have the amazing Ross Carter. So show us some love. Go, Ross, go for it.
Thank you. Thank you. I love that introduction, Melinda. Thank you so much. How's everybody doing today? Raise your hand if it feels like it's going to be a good day.
Good day. Good day.
Uh, yes. And if it's not, by the time this meeting is over, you will feel like you're having a good day because our mastermind leader comes to us from Houston, Texas, and she is my daughter. And she's a speaker with the Adoption Knowledge Affiliates. They have a conference coming up pretty soon, and she's going to do a transformation or transformative journey of self-discovery to uncover our authentic self. We have an authentic self, and if you didn't know it, you'll figure it out during this mastermind. We will also discover our creative self and have a fulfilling life. So for the next 40 minutes, I don't know who our timer is, but we'll watch the time and allow time for questions and answers when she is done. So what does it mean to be found? Taya will explain in her speech titled, I Found Her. Please give her a warm welcome. Taya Reed.
Ross, are we going to have our educational minute first?
Oh, I'm
Oh,
sorry. Can we
Charles
can
Radney.
we have Educational Minute by Charles Radney first?
Good morning, everyone. The educational moment today is coming from a book called Sparked by Jonathan Fields. I'll put that in the chat. And one of the things it says, he's come to realize that spark exists at the sweet spot between the 5 domains. The first one, purpose, knowing you're moving towards something that you believe in. The second one is engagement, excitement, energy, and enthusiasm for the pursuit of that something. The third one is meaningfulness, the feeling that what you do and who you are matters. The fourth one is expressed potential, the sensation of being fully you and not having to hide, bringing all of your potential to the experience and leaving nothing untapped. And the fifth one is flow, the blissful experience of getting lost in an activity, losing time, and becoming absorbed in that task. Back to you, Roz.
Thank you, Charles. Let's give Charles a round of applause for that educational moment. Take it all in, apply it to what you want to do in your life. And thank you for recognizing Jonathan Fields for giving that educational moment. All right. So back to the mastermind. Our leader is Taya Reed. Take it away, Taya.
Thank you. Thank you so much. What a wonderful way to kind of come into this time together and have my birth mom, which is a huge part of this presentation, have her introduce me. So good morning to each and every one of you today. What I want to kind of do first is I want to share that today's mastermind is designed to be a discovery hopefully of your best self. But we're going to do a few things, and I'm going to tease this out as we move along. But I want you to start thinking about this journey of self-discovery is going to involve a bit of excavating, a bit of decluttering, a bit of reorganizing, in the hopes that you will start to build out a very detailed love map. And all of this language I will explain as we move further. But let me start first by saying that the premise of I Found Her is based on the perspective of an adoptee who found her first mother, her biological mother. What some who are in the room may have a different perspective. And what I mean by that is, for you, the loss may be the loss of a primary caregiver. It may not be specifically that you are tied to this because of adoption, but instead, maybe there was the loss of a primary caregiver. So I want you to expand your viewpoint here with me today, since I'm working with a mixed audience. And I want you to consider what other possible loss I may have experienced as a child growing up. And that could be by way of the loss of maybe a grandparent. That may be by way of the loss of your biological father. Maybe there was a separation between your parents while you were growing up, and you experienced one parent more than the other. So there was a loss of a significant person in your life. So I want you to kind of broaden your perspective a little bit and think of childhood in the sense of, where might I have had a loss of a significant person in my life? And I'm going to share my screen and kind of build out our premise a little bit more. So give me just a moment here. So make sure we have pen and paper so that you can be able to take some notes as we move through our presentation today. Okay, let's see how this works, hopefully. Okay, so you're seeing the first screen, which is I Found Her, I hope, right? Okay,
Right.
So let me share a little bit about me. So I am a licensed professional counselor and supervisor. And as I stated earlier, I am also an adoptee. I also have been writing on Substack as a blogger, and I co-hosted a podcast by the name of this presentation, I Found Her, with my birth mom, Rosalind Carter. And currently, I have been working on an adoptee guided journal by the same name. So as an adoptee who has been in reunion with my birth mother now for 17 years and my birth father for 15 years, I have personally had to navigate this journey of self-discovery and healing that will go on today. The goal of this time is for us to talk about a lot of emotions that can generally come up when we are talking about loss. So this is not usually something that maybe is easy for us to talk about out loud. So I do want to set the tone for our time together and ask that we hold space together just a little bit differently in this meeting. My hope today is to be able to create a space for all of you to share. And to do that, I want to set a few ground rules. because some of this subject matter may be, as I use the word, and I'll tease it out more, excavate some of our deeply buried memories. And so when we tend to bring up stuff that's been suppressed, it can cause a physiological kind of shift in our body. Our body may start to notice in our stomach, we might feel a little bit of nauseousness or tension. We may notice an increase in our heart rate. We may notice even tightening in our jawline area. And we could also feel kind of, clammy in our hands and all of that. And that's our body having a physiological response to all the different emotions that we may experience. So I want us to be able to hold space for one another, because each of us has a perspective that is ours, and it's our lived experience. And so when we share, I want us to be able to create an openness for others to share maybe things that come up for them. And hopefully we can keep that in the room today, but I can't guarantee that, because sometimes we want to share what we've learned. But I do want us to allow one another to be able to talk and share what comes up throughout our time. Okay? So as we do that, let me get a sense of who's in the room. So by any chance, is there anyone in the room who is an adoptee just like I am? Anyone who was relinquished at either birth or later in life, maybe by way of foster care, but they were not raised by their primary caregiver? Is there anyone in the space that is their form of loss? Okay. And then if we expand it out, is there anyone in the room who may know someone who was adopted? Okay, great. And then also, is it possible that maybe someone in the room, like I said earlier, maybe the loss of the primary caregiver as a child was not having contact with your birth father? Is that by any chance someone in the room? Okay. And then we'll tease it out just a little further. Anyone who maybe was raised by a grandparent, and so maybe they didn't have their primary parents as their caregiver, but they were raised by their grandparents. Okay. So this just helps me to get a little bit of a sense of who's in the room with us today. So here's our four primary objectives. And I've been working on this perspective now, probably just within this last year. But over the last 2 years, I have found myself in more adoptee-led spaces. And specifically, I've been in writing groups, adoptee-led writing groups. And they've allowed me to really hone in on this perspective of what does I found her mean to me? And so we'll look first at what I call the excavation process. And when we look at the literal meaning of excavation, it is to very carefully remove the buried parts of something. It's the process of digging up or unearthing something. So in our first step, we're going to do some reflection and uncovering. And then we're going to move into what I call decluttering, which is the opportunity for us to let go of unhelpful narratives. For most of us, whether adopted or not, our childhood had us to internalize certain narratives. There were things that were possibly said or done to us as a child that we still carry that, and it may be an unhelpful narrative that impacts how we show up as an adult today. And then third, we're going to reorganize our attachment to ourselves. And that's going to involve us reframing our thoughts and beliefs about those narratives that we might have had kind of attach themselves to us as a young person. And doing these 3 steps will then move us to our 4th step, which is to craft our own personal love map. And I'll tease that out as we move forward. So this is what I found her represents. It's a journey to uncover your authentic self and foster a deep sense of love and acceptance for who you are. And I believe this quote sets the tone for what we're doing today. This quote by Salman Rushdie is "Your story, your power." And it says, "Those who do not have power over the story that dominates their lives, power to retell it, to rethink it, deconstruct it, joke about it, and change it as times change, truly are powerless." And I really sit with that quote because I do think we should have the opportunity to retell it over our lives. We should be able to joke about it, to pull it apart, and as I said earlier, to excavate. So I'm going to invite you guys now to, this will be where we may do a little bit more writing. So I have this signature question that me and my co-host came up with when we started to invite guests to our podcast. And we would end their time with us by asking the signature question of, what does "I found her" mean to you? And so what I want you guys to do is, over the next minute, as I time this out, I want you to jot down. This is an open-ended question. Yes, I've given you a little bit of context, but think of it as an open-ended question. And how would you answer this question? What does "I found her" mean to you? And then I'll invite you guys to share some of your thoughts. So take a minute right here and just jot down some thoughts.
Toastmaster Taya, Taya, I joined in between. I'm sorry to ask you a question. The answer can be open-ended, right? It doesn't have to do with. Thank you.
Yes, definitely. Mm-hmm. Okay. So who might want to share their thoughts on what does "I found her" mean to them? Anyone want to unmute? Okay, Charles.
When I first started listening to your podcast, it made me want to tie some of the thoughts you and your mom had into the class I do on attitudes in the workplace and having people discover where their attitudes are, because that's a different dimension of attitudes.
Excellent, excellent. Okay. I believe I see Deborah's hand.
Thank you, Taya. It's a tremendous meaning to me because I am on the opposite end of Ross. I am the mother of an adoptee. We adopted a child. And so your podcast was so heartfelt when we first heard it, and to be a part of the questionnaires and the interview, it was just so tremendous. And each time I hear that, I found her is immensely meaningful to me and my family.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Anyone else want to offer their thoughts to this question? Rosalind?
Yes, Taya, as I mentioned during the podcast too, I found her is a reflection of you and me. You found me, and in turn, I found you through that excavation. But also, I found myself. I am the person that I found and rediscovered and energized and appreciated some of the things that I did or didn't do, and then recognized the importance of the adoption process, but also the learning process of getting to know your children a lot better.
Okay, thank you guys for sharing. Okay, so let's kind of move into the next part here. So here are some of the responses that people might share. And I think in some way, shape, or form, each of you that did speak, there was an aspect of these same answers. But we've got finding one's birth parents, finding one's cultural identity, finding oneself, finding acceptance and belonging, and then finding peace and resolution. And so there was one particular guest on our podcast that I believe very clearly expressed the meaning of I found her. And so I want to take a moment and share that video here with you guys. And let's listen to Narissa.
So what does I found her mean to you?
I think I found her means that I found, in a literal sense, I found her, my biological mother. In a non-literal sense, I found her, myself.
Yes.
Right? I found, yes. I found a part of myself, like I said earlier, that was missing, that you can't really put into words. It's not a tangible thing. But when you find it, and you know that this is what was missing. So in finding her, I found myself.
Right, you guys. You probably heard Roz in the background. So let's now talk about my catalyst. Let's go back to the beginning of my story, and I'll excavate it out a little bit. So we see a picture here, and some of us, and maybe all of us, are familiar with Run DMC. But very specifically in the middle, we have Daryl McDaniels. He was a founding member of the rap group Run DMC. And he actually was what we call a late discovery adoptee. A late discovery adoptee is usually an adult, and they find out probably by mistake, and that was the case for him. It was not something that his parents had ever intended to tell him. But when he found out that the family that he thought was his was not, he went on a search to find his biological mother. And then he produced a documentary about it. And this is back in 2006. So I'm 36 years old, 35, 36 at this time, 35 actually, because it was before my birthday. And this documentary comes out. And for the first time, I start to see the possibility that maybe I too would be able to find my birth family, because I was in a closed adoption, which means that I was not allowed to have access as an adult to my birth records. And so when I saw him through this documentary, in addition to this wonderful, like, it evoked so many different emotions movie, Antoine Fisher, which had Derek Luke and Denzel Washington starring in it. It just confirmed that much more for me that I needed to search. And so there was an investigative genealogist listed on this documentary, and she had her contact information, and I decided to email her and just see if there is a possibility that I could as well find my biological parents. The thing is, I wasn't prepared for her maybe. When she responded to my email that there was a very good chance that she could find my biological mother, I froze. I froze because the path to her wasn't likely, nor was it well liked. The truth is, I wasn't supposed to find her. I believe that I was supposed to be thankful and grateful that I was found, but there was still this need. And I believe it stems from this perspective that I will build out around a figurative house, but what is mostly known by adoptees as what we call the primal wound. Now, the primal wound refers to the emotional and psychological impact of separation from the birth mother at the time of adoption or relinquishment. It is this deep sense of loss, of grief and rejection that often affects an adoptee's sense of self, their identity, their self-worth, and it can translate into difficulty in forming healthy relationships. This primal wound can manifest as feelings of abandonment, unworthiness, and a longing for connection to one's origins. And so in healing the primal wound, it will involve being able to acknowledge and process these complex emotions so that we can hopefully develop a stronger sense of ourselves and accept ourselves even more. So although this primal wound can be strongly linked to finding her, I want to offer that finding her wasn't the end goal. I did at the time think it was, but what I realized later on after our reunion was finding her was actually the beginning to finding myself. It was that as I got to know her, I got to create what I will call a better representation of myself. My love map, what is going to be, got to be more fully defined is what I'm trying to say. And I want to kind of give you guys language of that because I'm using this language to build this out. But as I found her, I started to recognize that there was even more of myself that needed to be discovered. And what I learned is that I had to go on a journey. And I'm inviting you all now to go on this journey as well, to excavate and declutter your buried parts so that you too may learn ways to reorganize your attachment to self. So when we look at this idea of a house, similar to decluttering a physical house, we need to be able to declutter our emotional house so that we can come to a more settled place within ourselves. We get to choose what emotions and thoughts that we want to keep or toss. And when there is less stuff, there will be less matter, less things for us to deal with, and we can start to feel lighter. Our perspectives will shift, and we learn to develop a greater appreciation for ourselves so that we can stand firm against all the various elements. So with that, we can then experience living in a sound house when we find ourselves. So let me pause for a moment here and have you all reflect on what I've shared so far. And when you sit in this quote, we can experience living in a sound house when we find ourselves. Who might want to share what comes to mind? Yes, Charles.
What comes to mind immediately is the book I referred you guys to this morning. Because on the title it says, discover your unique imprint.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I like that. Yes, thank you for sharing that. Anyone else? What comes to mind?
Well, this is Roz. The decluttering is what I'm thinking of first. You got to get the junk out the way so that you can open up to what's deeply hidden or what you've been hiding from, and then have a clear vision of where you need to go, where you want to go. Maybe you're afraid to go there, of what you might discover. So it's kind of like when we find ourselves, we might be afraid at first, but how do you not be afraid of the unknown? Is it truly unknown, or is it now a newfound discovery so that now we can find ourselves clearly?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Does that make sense?
Okay, very good, you guys. Thank you so much for your offering there. Okay, so let's now talk a little bit about a framework that I use often when I'm working with couples. It's known as the Gottman method. And Dr. John Gottman developed this theory called the sound relationship house. And as a couples therapist, I would see couples and I would share their feedback. I would share their results. And I would see this house. And then recently this year, I started to look at the house a little differently and really focus in on the very bottom part of this picture that we have here called love maps, build love maps. And so I want to draw parallels to this sound relationship house theory by Dr. John Gottman to the adoptee. So again, when we think about creating your own figurative house, the Gottman method outlines 7 key principles to make marriage work. And me just focusing in on the love maps part is to have you guys consider it as the first layer, much like a physical house. The first layer of the foundation is the emotional house. And so when we think about a house, literally, right, we have the foundation, we have the walls, and we have the roof. And wherever we live, there are these elements that we'll call like fire. And I know that happens in parts of California. Here it's the hurricanes, right? In other places, it's the wind, like tornadoes. And then in other places, it's the snow. And so oftentimes, right, when that season is on, we want our physical house to be able to stand up against those elements. And so the connection that I'm sharing here is much like we want our physical house to stand up against these elements, we also want and desire to have our emotional, figurative house be able to stand up against the various elements in life. So this is where I would like to propose that for the person who has been separated from their biological family, whether by adoption or divorce or some other form of separation, that first layer, the love map, was removed from us. It was excavated at the moment of our relinquishment or the separation from our first family. And we know that a physical house needs to have a strong foundation. Otherwise, over time, the foundation starts to become effective. The interior and the exterior framework will begin to show signs of shifting and moving and expanding. And it starts to reveal all of these cracks and the structural damage. And so what I'm wanting to propose to you guys here is that when a person's original foundation is removed or excavated, their sense of self then is significantly damaged because that love map has been removed. Our first parents, which includes our culture, our heritage, they've been excavated. And then we grow up on top soil that is foreign to us. So just as soil is fundamental to a physical house's foundation, our sense of self is rooted in our origins and heritage. And so to pull that quote out, we grow up on top soil that is foreign to us. Let's just pause here and kind of digest that. And, you know, maybe there's some different feelings and thoughts that are showing up in your body. And you want to be able to sit with those thoughts and those feelings because feelings are natural. And instead of suppressing them or stuffing them, maybe we just breathe through those feelings and we stay in the present and we stay focused and grounded. But we notice that certain emotions might be coming up. And so I want to invite you guys at this point to just jot down the emotions, the feelings that may have come up while I explored and expanded on that perspective. So just take a moment and write down whatever feelings kind of came up for you.
Taya, that's a powerful statement, right? That's a powerful concept. That whole concept about the topsoil, that is very powerful because that means that people are going through life with bondage, layers of bondage,
Yes.
layers of bondage that they have not gone back and researched or self-reflected as to why. Why am I going through this? Why am I experiencing this? What's the problem here? That is very, very powerful. I just want to tell you that because I'm not writing.
Yeah, no problem. Oh, I
That's
appreciate that.
awesome concept.
I
Very
appreciate
deep and
that.
intense for a
Thank
person
you.
that's really thinking about their struggles of life or why they're always repeating a certain syndrome. For me, what comes to mind is mindset. A person has fixed in their mindset certain paradigms that they refuse to lose or give up. Because
Yes.
when I coach people, I always talk about, do you have a fixed mindset or growth mindset? Are you willing to grow to a new level, embrace something new? So that is really awesome. I just wanted to tell you that.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, April.
For me, this is interesting as a sister of an adoptee. It makes me think of two flowers planted in similar soil and familiar with one another because of time and space, but kind of examining each other's leaves like, oh, yours are blue, yours are green. Why do we look so different? We're here in the same soil. And this is giving words and language to the familiarity of being in the same soil, but recognizing there's differences and maybe being aware that maybe we don't know, you're green or red, that's just it. But now saying, oh, there's a reason. Okay, there's something deeper. And so the perspectives you're sharing, for me, it's giving me language. For me, as I wasn't the adoptee, but the sister of adoptee, there's a lot of similar feelings that are coming up as well. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Okay. All right. Yes, Charles.
This kind of goes to April. Were you the older or the younger of the two?
The younger.
Okay, which means the older may have felt some challenges because now you were part of her space.
Or his space, yeah.
His space, okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I'm glad that we're processing, you guys, we're processing. So then that speaks to why a love map. I believe that the sound relationship house theory contributes to the concept of love maps by suggesting that building a strong relationship with oneself is foundational to healthy relationships with others. By creating a detailed love map of ourselves, an individual can then foster self-awareness, navigate their emotions more effectively, and then build a strong foundation for self-love and acceptance. And then that's captured in these bullet points as well. Okay. So I want to talk about one other school of thought, which is what we call attachment. Attachment styles, or the attachment theory, explores how early experiences shape our relationships and emotional development. It suggests that the bonds that we form with caregivers in infancy create these internal working models that then influence our attachment style, or how we connect with others throughout our lives. There's 4 attachment styles, but what I'll do in this time frame is just share with you that secure attachment is the primary. And then we have what are called insecure attachment styles. And those usually look like anxious, a person who tends to worry more, has anxiety, can be clingy, or avoidant, which is they value their independence more. They may be uncomfortable with intimacy. They may come across as dismissive. So typically what happens with our primary caregiver is, because they are our model, right? They're our first connection. When a person is able to develop what we call a secure attachment, it's usually because the caregiver has these primary traits. They're attuned to the child's needs. They tend to respond appropriately to the child's emotional and physical cues. They're considered more emotionally available. They offer comfort and support to their child when needed. They're trustworthy and reliable. There's this sense of consistency in how they show up. The child learns predictability around this caregiver, and they encourage exploration. So they provide a safe base for the child to explore their environment and develop independence. Whereas when we look at the insecure attachment styles of anxiousness or avoidant, we're dealing more with a parent or caregiver who might come across as unpredictable or inconsistent in attuning to the child's needs. So they can come across sometimes as neglectful or dismissive, which then results in them not necessarily being emotionally or physically available to their child. So the child feels alone. There can also be traits of insensitivity. There's a lack of responsiveness to the child's emotional cues, and there's a dismissiveness of their feelings. And then in the worst case scenario, we may have a caregiver who will engage in physical or emotional abuse. And so when these behaviors are predominant in a child's life growing up, they can, not always, lean more toward what we call the insecure attachment style. The thing is, if we do have an insecure attachment style, we can work through that and develop a more secure attachment as an adult when we do the work. So with that, now I want us to look very specifically at the 4 steps, which is the excavation, the decluttering, the reorganizing, and the love maps. And this is where I want us to transition a little bit into interactive, where I hopefully get to have you guys kind of respond a bit more to some of the questions that I'm going to pose. So looking at our time, I'm going to move us through just a little bit faster. I'm looking at my time, and I think I have hit my 40-minute mark. Is that correct, actually?
It's possible, but I think you could have 5 more minutes and
Okay.
then we can close.
Okay, great. Thanks for that, April, and thanks for that, Roz. Okay, so let me give you the principles here. So if you were to look at excavating your truth, then in unearthing the buried parts, you would want to look for or consider, what are the words that were used to describe me growing up? What labels might I have attached to myself? And do I still believe those words today? So if there was a sense of you feeling like you were a people pleaser and you had to do X and Y in order to get acceptance from others, you may think about where that came from. And do I still show up like that as an adult? If we move to decluttering, which I'm pulling an old movie, 27 Dresses here, you may then take what those narratives were that were formed and now begin the process of examining them, examining your self-talk and noticing how you show up, and possibly looking at, how can I reframe this? How can I reorganize this? Especially if we look to our third step. What could I do to show up differently at this space? What do I want to remove? What do I want to keep? Because not all things, of course, from our childhood affect us negatively. In fact, resilience is a key thing that we notice in our kids. But as we're decluttering, then we move into this space of being able to even look at a relationship that we have, a belief system that we have, and how might we now change that to a positive? And this quote here says, much like decluttering initially looks messy, so does the messiness of my mind, because I am attempting to reorganize my attachment to myself. So then when we come to the reorganizing part and the opportunity for us to put our beliefs and our thoughts in a new order, we think about, what insights have I gained from the excavation process that now help me to evolve and change those thoughts and beliefs? We look at, how can we visualize now our ideal self interacting with others? And this then would lead us to crafting our very own love map. And I use this picture here because I'm still working on a visual, but the idea here of a tree where you've got your roots that represent your core values. So that's your groundwork, right? Then you've got your strength and accomplishments, where that shows up through the trunk of the tree. And then you look at the branches and the leaves and you think about who is in your support system. Who are those people who have helped to nurture your well-being? And then we look at the sunlight and the clouds. And this could be a representation for our self-care practices, the things that we do to cultivate peace and restoration within ourselves. And then we might look at, even though it's not listed in this picture, we might look at what's some of the stones that I could place around the tree's base that are affirmations for me. And then if we look out past the tree, we could develop a path from that tree leading toward mountains, which would represent then our future achievements, including the short and long-term goals. So overall, you have this vibrant tree, hopeful, showing that we can excavate, declutter, reorganize, and cultivate a very detailed love map for ourselves. So we're at our close, where we put it all together. So you've got all the parts in play. And we'll close with letting you guys kind of give me some of your takeaways. What thoughts come to mind that maybe during our time you would say, hey, this is what I want to offer to the space right now?
I definitely feel like you took me on a journey of. Oh, go ahead.
I went ahead and took that off. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh. I feel like you took me on a journey and a path of hope to kind of first be aware of some emotions that were maybe there that maybe I didn't quite know were there. And then you gave some method to address. Here's some places that we can put them. Here's where you are. When you said, asked the question, I found her. I had a picture of myself hiding as a little kid playing hide and go seek, which was a favorite pastime. But then, through the adoptee story and how things unfolded, there was like this piece of her still left with all of these unanswered questions. And I found her today. For me, was going back to her, reaching out a hand and saying, hey, I'm here. Let's navigate this. And we have a path to now redefine and explore. So that's kind of what I felt going through this journey, which is not feeling stuck, but saying, you're safe. We can travel this journey and there's places for us to go.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, April. Anyone else want to offer what came up for them? Yes, Deborah.
Yes. This journey took me on the journey of the adoptee, always wanting to escalate, evaluate himself, and to keep pushing as to, I'm going to prove beyond what when I found I was an adoptee, I'm going to prove differently, and I'm going to keep mastering for me, for himself, for challenging. I can do this on my own without the push of my past or the knowledge of my past and why I'm the adoptee. So it helped me with all these affirmation of words. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Yes, Bond.
Yes, good morning. Great presentation, Taya. Firstly, I want to say I just had an oral surgery. I have a little difficulties in speaking, but I did enjoy your presentation this morning. The biggest takeaway that I got is from that video clip where the guest said, I found her, she found herself. This is really a shocking message for me. Life is a journey, and every moment ahead of us until it becomes known is always unknown. So we have to keep exploring, keep seeking for ourselves. When we found something about the other part of our life, I think in turn, we found ourselves and we found our uniqueness and we found something that we never know about ourselves. I think that is the biggest outcome we can get when we keep thinking even outside the world, and in turn we found ourselves. I really love this message. Thank you.
Thank you, Vaughn. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. Anything further? Yes, Melinda.
This was an incredible presentation because it gives a person the opportunity to do self-reflection on their life journey. That's what it is. Your life journey. Who are you? What happened to you in your past? What are the issues you had that you did not resolve? And this presentation was like, I would say, a checkup from the neck up.
I love it.
Good
Thank
job.
you.
My
Thank
feedback.
you.
Charles has
Yes.
his hand up. Charles.
Yes, Charles.
Listening to your presentation, I had two takeaways. First, if I'd known some of this information, well, not me myself, but if one of the people I knew was adopted had known this information earlier, it would have made their journey a lot easier. But I also look at it from the standpoint, when you find out at age 36 that you've got a half brother, that rolls on some of the same things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, yes, most definitely. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Who do I turn this back over to? Yes, Rosalind. Yes.
Yes, thank you so much, Taya, for sharing your expertise, giving us a sneak peek of your presentation at the Adoption Knowledge Affiliates Conference coming up next month, and for giving us the opportunity to go deep inside of ourselves and explore or take that journey that maybe we didn't know we had in front of us or were afraid to look for. And I get emotional when I think about it sometimes because it is deep. So everyone here and your audience at the conference will appreciate all that you've presented and will give them time to absorb and explore themselves and hopefully come out better knowing that they're an important part of their own life, because I found her is finding yourself. So thank you so much. And I think at this point, we can turn it over to our presiding officer, Melinda, where she could either give a general evaluation of the meeting or ask for closing thought or whatever she chooses to do to close this meeting. So thanks again, Taya, and thanks again for all the members who participated.
Thank you. I just want to reiterate another thank you to you for this presentation. It's going to make a magnificent impact on the attendees. Just get ready for some intense feedback for you, and maybe a suggestion for you to have them partner with other people in the conference, partner up in twos and exchange your thoughts. I used to do that in training, have people bounce off another person so to keep the total room engaged at all times. Always keep the room moving with their thought process and their sharing. Yes, and very engaged in that way. Thank you all for being here today, for all of you for sharing and interacting in the presentation. This was a good checkup from the neck up to see, are you still in your right mind?
Yes, yes.
Are you still normal? What are you thinking? This is one of those. Every now and then we have to do that. We have to do a self check in for ourselves in our lives. And sometimes we hinder ourselves by our unwillingness to embrace those self check ins because we don't want to deal with whatever could be our mental bondage we're carrying and not aware of. And so, yeah, it's very powerful. Thank you. I
I
want
want
to
to ask our guests to contact me at RC Nollins, the number one at msn.com, or R-O-Z entrepreneur at gmail.com so we could stay in touch.
We want to thank our guests for being here today. Any one of our guests want to share some feedback? Go right ahead. Okay, and in the sake of time, let's move on to Georgina. If you will share your closing thoughts, go right ahead, Georgina. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. So today we have received many sparks of inspiration, and it might be that we can fan those sparks into a big fire that will help us make progress in our lives. So my hope is that each of us can take one spark and translate it into an action. Just apply it in some way in your life before our next meeting, and then maybe at the next meeting we can share to keep ourselves accountable for actually applying the lessons that we learn in our meetings. So that's my closing, and thank you.
Exactly.
Thank you.
I agree.
And that's why I'm saying it's always important to keep yourself soaring like an eagle. Think about, I always talk about the eagles because the eagles come on down, they get their prey, and they go back up. So we got to pray today. We got to experience this opportunity to self reflect. So now we got this knowledge. So we're the eagles and we're soaring now to a higher level because we're growing and we're sharing. And Taya's going to grow to a higher level when she goes to her conference next month to present this powerful concept, very intense and very self-fulfilling. Yes, it is. And so us as entrepreneur Toastmasters, we have the privilege of soaring every day in our life by the way we embrace situations and people. And that's what makes us powerful entrepreneurs because we have the opportunity to make a difference. Because we're entrepreneurs, we have the opportunity to make a difference. And think, how do you make a difference in someone's life every day? It's not when you decide, it's every day. It's a one time opportunity. So I empower you today. Go to the next level. Do something special today for someone else in your life or someone you meet or you interact with. Thank you for being in our meeting today. And I'm going to say, as they say, peace out, Entrepreneur Toastmasters. You're awesome.